Haribol, Namaste, and happy Janmashtami today. My name is Janapati Das, and on this most holy, auspicious day of Krishna's appearance day, I decided to do a video for reading Krishna book. And although it's not directly Krishna in the story, it's the story of Uddhava delivering the message of Krishna to the Gopis. So all books and all stories and pastimes of Krishna are not different than Krishna. So on this most holy appearance day, please accept my respects. Let me offer my respectful obeisances to my Guru Dev, to my spiritual grandfather, and to you. And we are going to chant. So I hope you're having a nice day celebrating. Shrimate Haribol. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So, as we had been reading in the previous chapter, Krishna had deputed through his mercies, his unconditional mercy, to Uddhava, who is a very qualified living entity, to receive the mercy of Krishna by going to Vrindavan to deliver a message to the people of Vrindavan. But it was also a way to observe the unalloyed devotion that the Gopis had for Krishna, that all the residents of Vrindavan had for Krishna, but most specifically the utmost and topmost devotional service is exhibited by the Gopis. We can pray to the residents of Vrindavan, to the Gopis, to please allow us to be in service of them, because as Lord Chaitanya has said many times, it is one should not just be a devotee of God, a servant of God, but one should be the servant of the servant 1,000 times over to Krishna. And so Uddhava, of course, was observing this and was conversing with Nanda Maharaj and Mother Yashoda. And so now we will reach to this chapter 46, the delivery of the message of Krishna to the Gopis. When the Gopis saw Uddhava, they observed that his features almost exactly resembled the features of Krishna, and they could understand that he was a great devotee of Krishna's. His hands were very long, and his eyes were just like petals of the lotus flower. He was dressed in yellow-colored garments and wore a garland of lotus flowers. His face was very beautiful. Having achieved the liberation of Swarupya and having the same bodily features as the Lord, Uddhava looked almost like Krishna. In Krishna's absence, the Gopis had been coming dutifully to visit Mother Yashoda's house early in the morning. They knew that Nanda Maharaj and Mother Yashoda were always grief-stricken, and they had made it their first duty to come and pay their respects to the most exalted elderly personalities of Vrindavan. Seeing the friends of Krishna, Nanda and Yashoda would remember Krishna himself and be satisfied, and the Gopis also would be pleased by seeing Nanda and Yashoda. When the Gopis saw that Uddhava was representing Krishna even in his bodily features, they thought that he must be a soul completely surrendered unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They began to contemplate, who is this boy who looks just like Krishna? He has the same eyes like lotus petals, the same raised nose and beautiful face, and he is smiling in the same way. In all respects, he is resembling Krishna, Shamasundar, the beautiful dark boy. He is even dressed exactly like Krishna. Where has this boy come from? Who is the fortunate girl who has him for her husband? Thus they all talked among themselves. They were very anxious to know about him, and because they were simply unsophisticated village girls, they surrounded Uddhava. When the Gopis understood that Uddhava had a message from Krishna, they became very happy and called them to a secluded place to sit down. They wanted to talk with him very freely and did not want to be embarrassed before unknown persons. They began to welcome him with polite words in great submissiveness. We know that you are a most confidential associate of Krishna, and that he has therefore sent you to Vrindavan to give solace to his father and mother. We can understand that family affection is very strong. Even great sages who have taken to the renounced order of life cannot give up family members. Krishna has therefore sent you to his father and mother, otherwise he has no further business in Vrindavan. He is now in town. What does he have to know of Vrindavan? What does he have to know about Vrindavan village or the cows' pasturing grounds? These things are not at all useful for Krishna because he is now a man in the city. Surely he has nothing to do with persons who do not happen to be his family members. Why should one bother about those who are outside the family, especially and specifically those who are attached as the wives of others. Krishna is interested in them as long as there is a need of gratification, like the bumblebees who have interest in the flowers as long as they want to take honey out of them. It is very natural and psychological that a prostitute does not care for her paramour as soon as he loses his money. Similarly, when the citizens find that a government is incapable of giving them full protection, they leave the country. A student, after finishing his education, gives up his relationship with the teacher and the school. A rich man, after taking his reward from his worshiper, gives him up. When the fruit season is over, the birds are no longer interested in the tree. Just after eating in the house of a lord, the guest gives up his relationship with the host. After a forest fire, when there is a scarcity of green grass, the deer and other animals give up the forest. And so a man, after enjoying his girlfriend, gives up his connection with her. In this way, all the gopis began to indirectly accuse Krishna by citing so many similes. Uddhava understood that the gopis of Vrindavan were all simply absorbed in the thought of Krishna and his childhood activities. While talking about Krishna with Uddhava, they forgot all about their household business. They even forgot about themselves as their interest in Krishna increased more and more. One of the gopis, namely Srimati Radharani, was so much absorbed in thoughts of Krishna by dint of her personal touch with him that she actually began to talk with a bumblebee which was flying there and trying to touch her lotus feet. While another gopi was talking with Krishna's messenger, Uddhava, Srimati Radharani took that bumblebee to be a messenger from Krishna and began to talk with it as follows. Bumblebee, you are accustomed to drinking honey from the flowers, and therefore you have preferred to be a messenger of Krishna, who is of the same nature as you. I have seen on your mustaches the red powder of kunkuma, which was smeared on the flower garland of Krishna while he was pressing the breast of some other girl who is my competitor. You are feeling very proud by touching that flower, and your mustaches have become reddish. You have come here carrying a message for me. You are anxious to touch my feet. But my dear bumblebee, let me warn you, don't touch me. I don't want any messages from your unreliable master. You are the unreliable servant of an unreliable master. It may be that Srimati Radharani purposely addressed that bumblebee sarcastically in order to criticize the messenger Uddhava. Indirectly, Srimati Radharani saw Uddhava as not only resembling Krishna's bodily features, but as being equal to Krishna. In this way, she indicated that Uddhava was as unreliable as Krishna himself. Srimati Radharani wanted to give specific reasons why she was dissatisfied with Krishna and his messengers. She addressed the bumblebee. Your master Krishna is exactly of your quality. You sit down on a flower, and after taking a little honey, you immediately fly away and sit in another flower and taste. You are just like your master Krishna. He gave us the chance of tasting the touch of his lips, and then left altogether. I know also that the goddess of fortune, Lakshmi, who is always in the midst of the lotus flower, is constantly engaged in Krishna's service. But I do not know why she has become so captivated by Krishna. She is attached to him, although she knows his actual character. As far as we are concerned, we are more intelligent than the goddess of fortune. We are not going to be cheated anymore by Krishna or his messengers. According to expert opinion, Lakshmi, the goddess of fortune, is a subordinate expansion of Srimati Radharani. As Krishna has numerous expansions of Vishnu Murtis, so his pleasure potency Radharani also has innumerable expansions of goddesses of fortune. Therefore, the goddess of fortune, Lakshmi ji, is always anxious to be elevated to the position of the gopis. Srimati Radharani continued, you foolish bumblebee, you're trying to satisfy me and get a reward by singing the glories of Krishna, but it is a useless attempt. We are bereft of all our possessions. We are away from our homes and families. We know very well about Krishna. We know even more than you. So whatever you make up about him will be old stories to us. Krishna is now in the city and is better known as the friend of Arjuna. He now has many new girlfriends, and they are no doubt very happy in association with him. Because the lusty burning sensation of their breasts have been satisfied by Krishna, they are now happy. If you go there and glorify Krishna, they may be pleased to reward you. You are just trying to pacify me by your behavior as a flatterer, and therefore you have put your head under my feet. But I know the trick which you are trying to play. I know that you are a messenger coming from the great trickster Krishna. Therefore, please leave me. I can understand that you are very expert in reuniting two opposing parties, but at the same time you must know that I cannot place my reliance upon you nor upon your master Krishna. We left our families, husbands, children, and relatives only for Krishna, and yet he did not feel any obligation in exchange. He has left us for lost. Do you think we could place our faith in him again? We know that Krishna cannot be long without the association of young women. That is his nature. He is finding difficulty in Mathura because he is no longer in the village among innocent cowherd girls. He is in the aristocratic society and must be feeling difficulty in making friendship with young girls. Perhaps you have come here to canvass again, or to take us there. But why should Krishna expect us to return there? He is greatly qualified to entice all other girls, not only in Vrindavan or Mathura, but all over the universe. His wonderfully enchanting smile is so attractive, and the movement of his eyebrows so beautiful, that he can call for any woman from the heavenly, middle, or plutonic planets. Mahalakshmi, the greatest of all goddesses of fortune, also hankers to render him some service. In comparison to all these women of the universe, what are we? We are very insignificant. Krishna advertised himself as very magnanimous, and he is praised by great saints. His qualifications could be perfectly utilized if he would only show us mercy, because we are downtrodden and neglected by him. You poor messenger, you are only a less intelligent servant. You do not know much about Krishna, how ungrateful and hard-hearted he has been, not only in this life, but in previous lives also. We have all heard from our grandmother, Parnamasi. She has informed us that Krishna was born in a Kshatriya family previously to this birth and was known as Ramachandra. In that birth, instead of killing Vali, an enemy of his friend, in the manner of Kshatriya, he killed him just like a hunter. A hunter takes to a secure hiding place and then kills an animal without facing it. So Lord Ramachandra, as a Kshatriya, should have fought with Vali face to face, but instigated by his friend, he killed him from behind a tree. Thus he deviated the religious principles of a Kshatriya. Also, he was so attracted by the beauty of Sita that he converted Shurpanaka, the sister of Ravana, into an ugly woman by cutting off her nose and ears. Shurnaparka proposed an intimate relationship with him, and as a Kshatriya, he should have satisfied her, but he was so selfish that he could not forget Sita Devi and converted Shurnaparka, Shurpanaka, into an ugly woman. Before that birth as a Kshatriya, he took his birth as a Brahmana boy known as Vamana Dev and asked charity from Bali Maharaj. Bali Maharaj was so magnanimous that he gave him whatever he had. Yet Krishna, as Vamana Dev, ungratefully arrested him just like a crow and pushed him down to the Patala kingdom. We all know about Krishna and how ungrateful he is. But here is the difficulty. In spite of his being so cruel and hard-hearted, it is very difficult for us to give up talking about him. Not only are we unable to give up this talk, but great sages and saintly persons are also engaged in talking about him. We Gopis of Vrindavan do not want to make any more friendships with this blackish boy, but we do not know how we shall be able to give up remembering and talking about his activities. So true. The more you talk, the more you chant Krishna's names, the more you want to chant Krishna's names. It's never, ever addicting, and we never are quenched from the activities of Krishna consciousness. Since Krishna is absolute, his so-called unkind activities are as relishable as his kind activities. Saintly persons and great devotees like the Gopis cannot give up Krishna in any circumstances. Lord Chaitanya therefore prayed, Krishna, you are free and independent in all respects. You can either embrace me or crush me under your feet. whatever you like. You may make me brokenhearted by not letting me see you throughout my whole life, but you are my only object of love. In my opinion, Srimati Radharani continued, one should not hear about Krishna because as soon as a drop of the nectar of his transcendental activities is poured onto the ear, one immediately rises above the platform of duality, attraction, and rejection. Being completely freed from the attraction of material attachment, one gives up the attachment for this material world, family, home, wife, children, and everything, which is so materially dear to every person. Being dispossessed of all material acquisition, one makes his relatives and himself unhappy. Then he wanders in search of Krishna, either as a human being or in another species of life, even as a bird. It is very difficult to actually understand Krishna, his name, his quality, his form, his pastimes, his paraphernalia, and his entourage. Srimati Radharani continued to speak to the black messenger of Krishna. Please do not talk any more about Krishna. It is better to talk about something else. We are already doomed like the black spotted she-deer in the forest who are enchanted by the sweet musical vibration of the hunter. In the same way, we have been enchanted by the sweet words of Krishna, and again we are thinking of the rays of the nails of his toes. We are becoming more and more lustful for his association. Therefore, I request you not to talk of Krishna anymore. This talk of Radharani and the bumblebee messenger and her accusing Krishna, and at the same time her inability to give up talking about him, are symptoms of the topmost transcendental ecstasy called Mahabhava. The ecstatic Mahabhava manifestation is possible only in the persons of Radharani and her associates. Great acharyas like Srila Rupa Goswami and Vishwanatha Chakrabarti Thakur have analyzed these Mahabhava speeches of Srimati Radharani, and they have described the different sentiments such as Urgurna, bewilderment, Jalapa Pratijalpa, talking in different ways. In Radharani is found the science of Ujjala, or the brightest jewel, or love of God. While Radharani was talking with the bee, and the bee was flying hither and thither, it all of a sudden disappeared from her sight. She was in full mourning due to separation from Krishna and was feeling ecstasy by talking with the bee. But as soon as the bee disappeared, she became almost mad, thinking that the messenger bee might have returned to Krishna to inform him of all her talking against him. Krishna must have been very sorry to hear it, she thought. In this way, she was very much overwhelmed with another type of ecstasy. In the meantime, the bee, flying hither and thither, appeared before her again. She thought, Krishna is still kind to me. In spite of the messenger carrying disruptive messages, he is so kind that he has again sent the bee to take me to him. Srimati Radharani was very careful this time not to say anything against Krishna. My dear friend, I welcome you, she said. Krishna is so kind that he has again sent you. Krishna is so kind and affectionate to me that he has sent you back, fortunately, in spite of your carrying my message against him. My dear friend, you can ask from me whatever you want. I shall give you anything because you are so kind upon me. You have come to take me to Krishna because he is not able to come here. He is surrounded by his new girlfriends in Mathura, but you are a tiny creature. How can you take me there? How will you be able to help me in meeting Krishna while he is taking rest there along with the goddess of fortune and embracing her to his chest? Never mind. Let us forget these things about my going there or sending you. Please let me know how Krishna is faring in Mathura. Tell me if he still remembers his foster father, Nanda Maharaj, his affectionate mother, Yashoda, his coward friends, and his poor friends like us, the Gopis. I am sure he must sometimes sing about us. We served him just like maidservants without any payment. Is there any possibility that Krishna will come back and place his arms around us? His limbs are always fragrant with the guru scent. Please put all these inquiries to Krishna. Uddhava was standing near, and he heard Radharani talking in this way, as if she had become almost mad after Krishna. He was exceedingly surprised at how the Gopis were accustomed to think of Krishna constantly in that topmost ecstasy of Mahabhava love. He had brought a message in writing from Krishna, and now he wanted to present it before the gopis just to pacify them. He said, "My dear gopis, your mission of human life is now successful. You are all wonderful devotees of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, you are eligible to be worshipped by all kinds of people. You are worshipable throughout the three worlds because your minds are wonderfully absorbed in the thought of Vasudeva Krishna. He is the goal of all kinds of pious activities and ritualistic performances such as giving and charity, rigidly following the austerity of vows, undergoing severe penances, and igniting the fire of sacrifices. He is the purpose behind the chanting of the different mantras, the reading of the Vedas, controlling the senses, and concentrating the mind in meditation. These are some of the many different processes for self-realization and attainment of perfection of life, but actually they are only meant for realizing Krishna and dovetailing oneself in the transcendental loving service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is the last instruction of Bhagavad Gita also. Although there are descriptions of different kinds of processes of self-realization at the end, Krishna recommends one should give up everything and simply surrender unto him. All the processes are meant for teaching one how to surrender ultimately unto the lotus feet of Krishna. The Bhagavad Gita also says that this surrendering process is completed by a sincere person executing the processes of self-realization and wisdom and austerity after many births. Since the perfection of such austerity was completely manifested in the life of the gopis, Uddhava was fully satisfied upon seeing their transcendental position. He continued to say, "My dear gopis, the mentality which you have developed in relationship with Krishna is very, very difficult to attain, even for the great sages and saintly persons. You have attained the highest perfectional stage of life. It is a great boon for you that you have fixed your mind upon Krishna and have decided to have Krishna only, giving up your family, home, relatives, husbands, and children for the sake of the Supreme Personality. Because your mind is now fully absorbed in Krishna, the Supreme Soul, universal love has automatically developed in you. I think myself very fortunate that I have been favored by your grace to see you in this situation." When Uddhava said that he had a message from Krishna, the gopis were more interested in hearing the message than hearing about their exalted position. They did not very much like being praised for their high position, which is the truth of a pure devotee. They're not interested in the praise and glory given to them by people. They prefer to hear about Krishna, but they know that it's pleasing to Krishna to accept the praises of the devotees to their spiritual master, to the elevated devotee. But they don't take much pleasure in it themselves. They showed their anxiety to hear the message which Uddhava had brought from Krishna. Uddhava said, "My dear gopis, I am especially deputed to carry this message to you, who are such great and gentle devotees. Krishna specifically sent me to you because I am his most confidential servitor." Okay, let's see. The written message which Uddhava brought from Krishna was delivered to the gopis by Uddhava, but he personally read it before them. The message was very gravely written, so that not only the gopis, but all empiric philosophers might understand how pure love of God is intrinsically integrated with all the different energies of the Supreme Lord. From Vedic information, it is understood that the Supreme Lord has multi-energies, Parasha Shaktir Vividaiva Shruyate. Also, the gopis were such intimate personal friends of Krishna that while he was writing the message for them, he was much moved and could not write distinctly. Uddhava, as a student of Brihaspati, had very sharp intelligence, so instead of handing over the written message, he thought it wise to read it personally and explain it to them. Uddhava continued, "These are the words from the personality of Godhead. My dear Gopis, my dear friends, please know that separation between ourselves is impossible at any time, at any place, or in any circumstance, because I am all-pervading. This all-pervasiveness of Krishna is explained in the Bhagavad Gita, both in the 9th and 7th chapter. Krishna is all-pervasive in his impersonal feature. Everything is resting in him, but he is not personally present everywhere. In the 7th chapter also, it is stated that the 5 gross elements, earth, water, fire, air, and sky, and the 3 subtle elements, mind, intelligence, and ego, are all his inferior quality energies. And when we talk about ego, that's hankara, the false ego, the misunderstanding that I am matter, or I am this. But there is another superior energy which is called the living entity. That's the real ego. The living entities are also directly part and parcel of Krishna. Therefore, Krishna is the source of both the material and spiritual energies. He is always intermingled with everything as cause and effect. Not only the gopis, but all living entities are always inseparably connected with Krishna in all circumstances. So the living entity is always present with Krishna, even though the illusion that we are separated from Krishna comes from ahankara, or the identification, the false identification with the body and with matter. And that comes about from a desire to not serve Krishna. But Krishna, we are still present within Krishna's energies in the material world. But our illusion is that we've chosen to forget Krishna, and so therefore Krishna, through his material energies, casts that shadow of forgetfulness over the living entity. The gopis, however, are perfectly and thoroughly in cooperation with the relationship with Krishna, whereas the living entities under the spell of Maya are forgetful of Krishna. They think themselves as separate entities, as having no connection with Krishna. Love of Krishna, or Krishna consciousness, is therefore the perfectional stage of real knowledge, or in understanding things as they are. Our minds can never be vacant. The mind is constantly occupied with some kind of thought, and the subject matter of such thought cannot be outside the 8 elements of Krishna's energy. One who knows this philosophical aspect of all thoughts is actually a wise man, and he surrenders unto Krishna. So the idea of surrendering to Krishna, to surrendering, just as in the Bhagavad Gita is stated in the end of the chapter, is the goal. The goal, the means, and the goal. The gopis are the typical example of this perfectional stage of knowledge. They are not simply mental speculators. Their minds are always in Krishna. The mind is nothing but the energy of Krishna. Actually, any person who can think, feel, act, and will cannot be separated from Krishna. So this is where it was also stated in the Bhagavad Gita that the mind can be the living entity's best friend or worst enemy, depending on how they use the mind. If the mind is impure, if it is covered by the material energy, if it's covered and it's utilized in a way to perpetuate the false ego, then it is worst enemy. And then if it is used in absorption to Krishna, then it can be your best friend. But the stage in which he can understand his internal relationship is called Krishna consciousness. The diseased condition in which he cannot understand his eternal relationship with Krishna is the contaminated stage, or Maya. Since the gopis are on the platform of pure transcendental knowledge, their minds are always filled with Krishna consciousness. For example, there is no separation between fire and air, so there is no separation between Krishna and the living entities. When the living entities forget Krishna, they are not in their normal condition. As for the gopis, they are always thinking of Krishna. They are on the absolute stage of perfection and knowledge. These so-called empiric philosophers sometimes think that the path of bhakti is meant for the less intelligent, but unless the so-called man of knowledge comes to the platform of bhakti, his knowledge is certainly impure and imperfect. Actually, the stage of perfecting one's eternal relationship with Krishna is love and separation. But that is also illusory because there is no separation. The gopis were never separated from Krishna, even from the philosophical point of view, so there was no separation. Okay, so I'm going to stop there. It's a long chat, continues on with Uddhava reading this letter. Hope you have a wonderful Janmashtami. Jaya Shri Krishna. Let's chant. Thank you very much. Okay, Hari Bol. Jaya Jaya Shri Krishna, Jaya Vrindavan. Hari Bol.